Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at the Jonsbo Magic Fan. This is the ZF-120 ARGB, both in the 3-in-1 pack and the 2-in-1 pack, and also you can pick these up on AliExpress and various other retailers with all kinds of different kits. Now actually this was sent to us by UglyBob, so thank you very much UglyBob. It actually came with a controller as well, so that's all bundled in, so you had like 5 fans, RGB controller, or RGB hub I should say rather, it isn't a controller. And all of this was somewhere in the region of about £30. I'll put some links in the video description. Something I have noticed with these straight away, so if you are considering these for your next build, potentially if you buy them from, let's say, overseas, you probably will get a better bargain. These at the moment, various retailers around the UK, including Amazon, all retailing somewhere between the sort of £9 to £12 each mark, which I feel puts it into awfully dangerous territory, especially when you've got fans such as the legendary Arctic P12 ARGB 0dB, and of course you've also got slightly newer players in the market such as Thermaltake with their CT120 and CT140 fans. So potentially lots to compare these with. We'll go through, do an unboxing, see what they're all about. I'll do some practical tests as well. I have actually got them, as you can see there, on display, so you can actually see them running, although the RGB, the camera does never pick up the RGB properly, but at least you can see they are working, and they are essentially silent. I hate filming when there's noises going on, although for those of you that are wearing headphones at the moment and are picking up some of those subtle details, you will notice that our next door neighbour is currently sanding something down. So, with all that said, let's take a look and see what we get. So first of all, obviously there are 2 different pack types, potentially even more. I think there's a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2. I'm not sure if there's a single one as well. I will put links in the video description, you check it out anyway. So this is the 3-in-1 pack, so obviously 3 fans in that one, and also you get the twin pack here. Now the 3 pack is obviously the one which is behind me. The cool thing that they've got on these, the reason why they're called the Magic Fan is because basically, you know how we all joke that building a PC is like just basically expensive Lego? Well, Jonsbo have taken that one step further and actually made Lego fans. Now obviously they're not Lego because that would be trade description, but they work in a very similar way, so they kind of lock together. We've all seen those other fans on the market, ones with magnetic connections, other ways of daisy chaining, clips that hold them together, etc. But they've done this on a relatively inexpensive way, so literally they just lock together. The plastic lugs fit inside of each other, which possibly you're seeing for some B-roll. If not, we will show you very shortly. So in terms of specifications, 500 to 1500 RPM is the rated speeds. Having said that, I have tested them, and in the MSI Center, on the lowest setting, which takes it right down to the bottom, we're looking at just slightly over 400 RPM, at which point they are totally silent and are still moving a little bit of air, not a great deal, but if you're one of those people that just wants to have some fancy fans that look nice but don't necessarily move a ton of air, but actually will circulate something, then these are definitely going to be worth looking at. I would say in terms of actual performance, they're very similar to the Up Here set we reviewed ages and ages ago, which that has become considerably more expensive now for the 5-pack with the controller hub. So yeah, potentially they are a replacement for that. In terms of static air pressure, not a great deal. You'll be seeing the description on the screen now. When it comes to CFM, again, not the highest. We're looking at just slightly over 60 CFM in terms of the amount of air they move. Something which is a little bit odd, which I don't quite understand, is the actual noise rating. So they've got the noise rating. I'm actually going to have to look to double check here. So they are saying between 23.8 to 28.9 dBA. Now the average room, including the one we're in at the moment, just the ambient floor level is somewhere between 35 to 40 dBA. And they're not quieter than the room. So I'm thinking that the actual descriptions they're putting on these is over and above ambient threshold, depending what that ambient threshold is measured at. So I'm not entirely sure. A lot of manufacturers are doing it this day and age. It's really annoying. It's like, just give us a proper reading so we know what they're like, because basically all dBA levels are essentially useless depending on where they're actually going to be situated. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's take a look and see what we actually get. So we're going to look at the twin pack, and you get your wiring loom, and also you get the 2 fans. Nicely packaged, they haven't really wasted a great deal here, and they've put them in this nice foam as well so it doesn't get damaged in transit, which is always a nice thing to see. And this is the white version. They do come in black or white depending on what your preferences are. Something immediately which stands out with these is the fact that on the back they do have an absolute ton of support struts on there, which is a good thing in terms of kind of rigidity, but it's a bad thing in terms of the actual noise, which we'll check out a little bit later. The actual noise that you get from the fans going past each one of those individual struts does make it have a very odd noise profile. Again, we'll check that out slightly later. So the way the fans work, on this side you've got a female section, on that side there is a male section. We've also got two tabs sticking out on each side, and obviously if you've got another one they are the same. So essentially what you're looking at doing is just matching those pins up. So male to female, and they just plug in across. So essentially you just push them together. So let's try and do that now. It isn't the easiest of things to do. After being used to kind of magnetic ones and other types on the market, this is a little bit more difficult. My suggestion would be to possibly lay them down flat, and it's actually quite hard to match up the pins as well. So let's see if we can get this to go in. There we go, there's one, and there's two. So it does require quite a bit of force on there. I am slightly concerned that some people are going to do this, probably myself included, and accidentally bend a pin because it's not quite in straight. But I guess that is part and parcel of the design. So you take the rough with the smooth. If you don't want to spend £100 on fans, then this is kind of like the next best solution. So that is your two fans. They are mounted together. So now if you want to apply them to a radiator or whatever, then you absolutely can do. Got nice transparent blades in there to let the RGB shine through, as you can quite clearly see in the background there. Again, on the back, see all those support struts. You do have rubberized sections, front and back as well, to stop vibrations coming through. And obviously if you want to take them apart, then it's just a case of, like Lego, try and pull them apart. They are quite tough. Obviously this is brand spanking new, so they are going to be a little bit tough. After a while of doing that constantly, then they're going to be absolutely fine, a little bit easier to manage. So that is the fans itself. Obviously usual dimensions, 120 by 120 by 25 mil in depth. So that's all cool. Let's take a look at the actual wiring. So the wiring is actually quite interesting. Essentially what it's going to do is reduce the wiring. So if you've got a whole bunch of these, like 5, 6, maybe 10 of these fans, you are going to be very much limiting the amount of RGB and PWM wiring which is going on. So there is actually an extension as well. So if you're thinking, well, I don't necessarily want to put 3 together, I quite like having 2 at the front, maybe 1 at the top or 1 at the back, then you can do. You can still daisy chain them. There is an extension cable, which isn't the longest, but if you take into consideration how long a case might be, you should be okay. I think if you daisy chain maybe a couple at the front, a couple at the top, 1 at the back, then you'd be absolutely fine. I would have liked to have seen this being a little bit longer, although potentially depending on how you wire it, then you might be able to get away with it, because the main one, which actually has the PWM and the addressable RGB, that's this one here. So this has got the main plug, which plugs into the side here. So just plug that in, snaps into place. So then you've got all of this cabling, which you can then space out from your motherboard, depending obviously where it's going to be. So that is some of the reason of about, I want to say about 50 centimeters, 60 centimeters. I will measure it, and if it's that wrong, I'll put it on the screen. But that gives you a rough idea. So you can then get this other cable. It is actually pinned as well, so you can't physically plug it in the wrong way. Much like a USB plug or USB 2 ports, uses that sort of design. And there we go, that's plugged in. No, that's not plugged in. There we go. So then obviously you can plug the other one in a little bit further down the line, making sure you've got them pinned correctly. I'm so used to doing USB 2s, this is having 6 pins rather than 9 is a little bit confusing. So there you go, that is how you can extend it. So it does give you a little bit of extension, not a huge amount. When you want to connect them up to your computer, so you've got a single PWM 4-pin, again that's going to give you RPMs, in my instance, between around about 420, 430 up to 1500 RPMs, and then you've got your standard 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB, and also a pass-through should you need to connect other things. Again, this kit that Bob actually sent over did come with this actually rather handy little ARGB hub, not from the same brand. It's from somebody called Tucer. I think I'm pronouncing that right. That's actually very cool. On the back, it actually shows you what all the pins do. So if for some reason you lose the box or the instructions, etc., it tells you what it is, although it's very straightforward. Addressable RGB input, where you've got the single connector, you've got 5 outputs there, 5 outputs there, and then at this end you've got your SATA power to power the lot. So yep, happy days. Would have been nice to have seen it with a PWM hub in there as well, but I guess it's absolutely fine because you can just plug it into your motherboard, etc. There's also an extension cable as well for this hub, so that just plugs in to there, and then you plug the other end into your motherboard and that grabs your signal, or maybe from a controller, that sort of stuff. Obviously you get all of your screws, etc. Bit of a shame to see the screws, they're black rather than being white, being that it's white fans, but not the end of the world. So just to clarify, obviously if you're using these maybe on a 240mm AIO or just at the front of your case or whatever, literally all you're going to be doing is plugging these together, make sure they're around the right way. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it stood up. Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about bending those pins, so let's do it led down. There we go. And it snaps into place. So there you go, 2 fans, all with 1 PWM connector and 1 addressable RGB connector. Now, of course, you can extend these pretty much as far as you want. I'm guessing 4 of them is probably going to be the max for most cases. There's no reason why you'd want it longer, but again, you can use that extension cable to then daisy chain further on down through, should you wish to. Again, going to be down to the individual. It doesn't support any lighting features such as chase or follow, so you can't have it so it starts here one color, goes to change to another, and it carries on through. So all the fans are going to replicate exactly the same thing. Obviously, you can kind of see that in the background shot. Anyway, so let's get these things fired up and we'll do some sound tests, and you can hear what they're like, and we'll see what the major defect of these actually is. So here we are, we're back and we've got it all set up. I've actually reduced the brightness of the fans so that you can actually see them a bit better on screen. It doesn't really come across on camera how nice these actually look. The colours are, yeah, really nice. They're very vivid. They pop quite a bit, but they don't seem to on camera for some reason. I'm not too sure why. I am somewhat of a novice when it comes to cameras, etc. Anyway, what you're interested in is what they actually sound like. So at the moment, these are on the lowest setting. I'm actually using my Noctua. I think this is the NTC1 fan controller. So I've just got a power supply, powered this up, and I've got a separate RGB controller for the lighting, etc. Not that that's important, but in terms of noise, so this is on their lowest possible setting, which I would guess, not having it hooked up to a computer, is somewhere around sort of 350 to 400 RPM, something along those lines, and they are completely silent. There's no noise being generated. Very, very slight amount if I get my ears very close to it. So in reality, you're never going to hear these. These are, I think, are where they excel. If you're having a system where you just don't want the fans on full blast and you don't have to move an absolute ton of heat, then I think these are going to work out very well. So let's increase the speed a little bit. So if we set this up to about 50%, and that's when you start to hear that kind of, it almost sounds like a biplane. There's a very unusual kind of hum to it, and I think it's because of the shape of those blades. And it depends which angle you're on as well. From slightly further away, it isn't really notice it, but it is a very, very, very low rumble. If I turn that around, that's my finger. So I think just slightly under 50%. Yeah, there we go. It's removed it altogether. Around about 800 RPM, at least from MSI sensors I've got there. Currently, those are running at 750, and they're still moving a decent amount of air. And actually, if you're watching and if you're paying attention, you'll notice that the USB that I've stuck up on the wall there is actually moving around, and also the sign that says "Patience, you must learn" is actually wobbling on the wall where the fans are actually blowing it. So it is moving a bit of air, but it's not on full blast. Unfortunately, when they're on full blast, this is kind of what they sound like. They do ramp up quite slowly, so it's not too bad. It's not like that ramping noise, but it's the actual fan noise. So even Kath, who's on the other side of the camera and doesn't really pay much attention to noise at all, her eyes are just widened. It sounds very much like a drone. It is moving quite a bit of air, but that's a really annoying pitch. and I'm pretty sure it's the turbulence between the blades and the frame behind. Now I've actually tried very similar fans out on the Jonsbo Pisa A5 cooler, or Pisa 5, whichever it is, which actually is in the PC behind me, and it doesn't seem to make the same noise. So whether or not it's going to make a difference what it's mounted against, when there's something behind it, the pitch changes. So again, your mileage may be different, then you can just hear air. So there is going to be an element of basically where are you going to put them, which is a shame because they're actually really nice looking fans. The low RPMs is excellent. Let's see if we can... Yeah, you can hear that noise, can't you? It does sound like a biplane powering up and powering down the engines. Or an air raid siren, possibly. Anyway, so how can I really summarise this? It's very hard to do when you're gifted something, which is obviously a very generous thing. And again, thank you very much, UglyBob, for sending these over. I would say to anybody who's contemplating buying these, you're going to have to think quite carefully about where you're actually going to be using them. If you're going to be using them in a pretty much free air chassis with nothing behind it restricting it, then potentially you might be limited on what actual kind of RPM range you're going to be able to use them without them being a little bit intrusive into your environment. If you're just a PC gamer, you don't care less, you're wearing a headset, it's not going to be an issue at all. And I think for the money, around about £30 for a 5-pack with the hub, then it's a pretty decent price. There's a lot to like about them, but unfortunately there are a lot of fans on the market, especially some of the cheaper ones now. And even if you spend a couple of pounds more per fan, I feel you do possibly get a better product. But at low RPMs, they are excellent. But you're going to have it in a case which is relatively well ventilated anyway, because the static pressure isn't going to be high enough to move a lot of air. So in a high TDP system, as nice as it might be them being quiet, they're not going to move a tremendous amount of air. But having said all that, I will be putting these actually in the Jonsbo D41 case. So we are going to be doing a Jonsbo build. So the Jonsbo Pisa's going in, which has actually got the same sort of fan design. These will all be going in as well. So we're going to finally get the Jonsbo PC finished. So that's actually going to be worth watching. So if you are interested in these fans and you want to know what they're going to be like actually in real world use inside of a computer, then do check that out. It will be linked after the video is done, obviously. But if you want to find out when that video goes out and when it's live, do click on the subscribe button and the chime notification. And also, don't forget to share this video. It all does help the channel. So overall, I think these have got a lot of potential, but it is going to be one of those things where you are going to have to slightly consider where they're going to be and how fast you actually want them to run. Otherwise, you could potentially run into noise issues. But once again, massive thanks to UglyBob. Much appreciated. And I think that's going to wrap this one up. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To. And hopefully we'll catch you in the follow-up video. Thanks for watching.